So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to Coffee Talk. It is time once again for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having some discussion about what is going on in the world today. We'll take a look at some clips from the news, have a little bit of dialogue with those of you who are able to join us for the live portion. And if you are watching or listening somewhere else and you wanted to join the live portion, you can find us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Most of the time, I'm early today, but Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, and that is at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. And again, I'm early today because just like yesterday, I'm tied up with appointments. So I had to get it knocked out. So here we go. I'll go ahead. Of course, I do read through as many of the comments as is plausible for the benefit of those of you who are listening and not able to see. And I'll say hello to some of the people that have chimed in thus far. I see Helter is here. Dragon is here. Brian is here saying hello already. And I've got Monkey. Monkey is under me, though, and hopefully he doesn't pull on any of the cables, because that's what he does. Monkey, of course, is a cat. For those of you who may have never come across us before, Cyberjack Sr. is joining us as we get ready to jump off into the news and see what's going on in the world today. Come on, cut that out. And see what is going on in the world today. Top story, of course, is a story tying over from yesterday. I talked about it briefly because at that time they were suggesting that Hez, and I'm going to call them Hez instead of saying the whole thing, which would include Bola, to try to stay out of trouble with ScrewTube, because I took 2 hits yesterday, one on each channel, and they don't tell you why. They don't tell you why you get hits. It wasn't major, but 2 small hits, but they add up. They add up, and it's frustrating, and it makes you. It discourages you. It discourages you from wanting to do videos at all, which is why ScrewTube does that to people. And I see Tuck has joined us here today, because at the time that I read the story yesterday, there was reports that 150 people were affected by the pager explosions. Now that number is up around 4,000. And there's been an additional strike that happened earlier in the day. So this has been compounded. And I see Raccoon has joined us as well as we get ready to jump into this, because we have gone from pagers now to handheld radios. Their walkie-talkies are blowing up. That happened, I guess, this morning. So Reuters article, Hez handheld radios detonate across Lebanon. So handheld radios used by Lebanon's armed group Hez, I'm going to call them again, detonated late on Wednesday afternoon across the country's south and in southern suburbs of the capital, Beirut. A security source and a witness has said at least one of the blasts took place near a funeral organized by Iran-backed Hez for those killed the previous day, when thousands of pagers used by the group exploded across the country. The group said on Wednesday it had attacked Israeli artillery positions with rockets in the first strike at its arch foe since pager blasts wounded thousands of its members in Lebanon and raised the prospect of a wider Middle East war. Well, that's no big deal, because they fire rockets at Israeli positions all the time. They have been doing so for years. Isn't that right, Monkey? Israeli spy agency Mossad, which has a long history of sophisticated operations on foreign soil, planted explosives, and this is what is being accused now, planted explosives inside pagers imported by Hez months before Tuesday's detonations, a senior Lebanese security source and another source told Reuters. Israel, by the way, to my knowledge, has still not claimed this. Death toll rose to 12, including 2 children. Lebanese Health Minister Firas Abiad, said on Wednesday, Tuesday's attack wounded nearly 3,000 people. I've heard it's nearly 4 now, including many of the militant group's fighters and Iran's envoy to Beirut. And this is where it gets weird. A Taiwanese pager manufacturer denies it had the produced these pager devices, which exploded in an audacious attack that raised the prospect of a full-scale war between Iran-backed Hez and Israel. Gold Apollo said the devices were made under license by a company called BAC based in Hungary's capital, Budapest. So Taiwan is like, we didn't make those. Another company is using our name. There was no immediate word on when Hez had launched its latest rocket attack, but normally the group announces such strikes shortly after carrying them out, suggesting it fired at the Israeli artillery positions on Wednesday. Hez has vowed to retaliate. Yeah, well, I mean, no kidding. That's been going on forever. Against Israel, whose military declined to comment on the blast. The two sides have been engaged in cross-border warfare since the Gaza conflict in October, fueling fears of a wider Middle East conflict that could drag in the United States and Iran. But again, now, a day later, and that's video footage of from a supermarket, a market of some kind, where you can actually see the blast go off and the guy hits the deck there. First, it was all their pagers, and there it is, blam, and all the papers fly, and he falls on the floor. First, it was pagers. Golly, monkey. And now it's their walkie-talkies. And it's still unclear as to whether it was a cyber attack causing the batteries to blow up, or there was actually explosives planted inside of all of these devices, as was suggested by the Lebanese government, claiming that they think that they were basically booby-trapped, which would be an incredible operation since Hez purchased 5,000 of these pagers from Budapest months ago. And I'm like, nobody ever opened any of them up. When I had a pager in the 90s, I opened mine. I don't know if I would have identified a tiny explosive, but you think some of them would have. Dilo has joined us. Glad you could make it today. Talking about what I'm calling Hez now to try to avoid more conflict with ScrewTube, because they hit me twice yesterday again. They really don't make it desirable to do this at all. I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for the people that actually come in and watch, there would be no incentive. There would be no incentive, because ScrewTube really just messes with you when you don't toe the line, when you don't toe their line. So now, and there's no numbers yet on how many people were harmed by the walkie-talkie explosions that took place. Walkie-talkie explosions that took place this morning. Waiting to see how that worked. And Raccoon says, I saw some of the photos, looked like someone sprayed red paint everywhere. It's crazy. Well, I mean, if you think about it, most people are going to carry that pager on, come on, kitty, on their hip. And, you know, if someone had it, say, on the front of their hip, if they had it, you know, forward of their hip bone, and it were to explode, it could penetrate deep enough to hit that femoral artery. And then you're just going to bleed out. I'm surprised they haven't declared more people dead yet. But at the same time, they said that a few hundred of them are critically wounded. So it remains to be seen. Even a casual injury, when you're looking in terms of a third-degree burn like that, could have lifelong ramifications on anybody who might have been exposed to that explosion. Because again, the new numbers are that there's roughly around 4,000 people were carrying one of those pagers when they went off. And now, this morning, their walkie-talkies went off. Their walkie-talkies have exploded. No numbers on that, though. But, I mean, that's very dystopian. That's very dystopian. Whether they somehow manage to make booby-trapped equipment and slip it past Lebanon, which doesn't seem likely. That's crazy. Or it was hacked and detonated. Remains to be seen. Again, Israel has not even claimed this. Has it even claimed this? and they're Taiwanese. It's Taiwanese equipment manufactured in Budapest, right in their backyard. Right in their backyard is where it was manufactured. Pelter says, what? The pagers and radios are a hell of a statement. They probably bugged the equipment in addition to rigging them to explode. That could be. That could be. Monkey, you're not making this easy. And Dragon says, huge opportunity for someone who has a flock of carrier pigeons. Maybe. And Jericho says, this is some serious video game stuff. And Alexander is here and says they're going to listen in the background. That is fine. Glad you checked in. Glad you checked in. As again, doing this early today because I'm supposed to go to an animal shelter this afternoon and try to get my fosters adopted again. And remember last week I ran into some issues with that, or it was last week, the week before, ran into some issues with that because I got there and they were like, oh, you're not scheduled. It's like, gee, thanks. So I ran around for nothing. As we shift to American soil here, Western Journal article, and I was waiting for this. I was waiting for this. The FBI had already been warned about a Trump assassination, the Trump assassination suspect, Ryan Ruth. No kidding. You think so? Why am I not surprised that he was already on their watch list, that they just fumbled the ball again? The man suspected of planning to assassinate former President Trump had been reported to U.S. federal officials long before he was arrested in Florida on Sunday, according to a news report published Tuesday. In fact, a nurse who encountered Ryan Wesley Ruth in the Ukraine was so worried about his activities that she contacted the FBI in 2023. And it wasn't the first time his name had been brought to the Bureau's attention. Ruth is an outspoken leftist with a felony conviction from 2002 for possession of a fully automatic machine gun without a license. He was taken into custody after fleeing from Trump International Golf Course near West Palm Beach, where he'd apparently been frightened off by gunfire from a Secret Service agent. Left behind at the scene, a loaded SKS-style 7.62 caliber rifle and scope with the serial numbers defaced, and a backpack and a GoPro camera. He faces 20 years in prison on weapons charges. According to the Journal, Ruth traveled to the Ukraine after the Russian invasion in 22, claiming he was organizing volunteer fighters. A former CIA officer involved in organizing humanitarian and volunteer efforts in the Ukraine. Oh, please. Is that what the CIA does now? Identified by the Journal as Sarah Adams, told the newspaper Ruth was considered a fraudster and a kind of a whack job. Okay. A lot of people were trying to get him to stop his activities or at least prevent people from falling for his scams, Adams said, according to the Journal, and he was known to harbor bitter feelings against Trump. Then why did the other reports say that he's a former Trump supporter? That's what I want to know. So yeah, big surprise. Who didn't see this coming? The FBI had already been warned about this guy in advance and ignored it. And they brought up the weapons charge because that's what I had heard, that he had a felony conviction for being in possession of a fully automatic machine gun without licensing. That is in the United States, but it runs a lot deeper than that, because I think this is this the article? I've got an article here that describes his arrest record better detail, which is actually pretty interesting. And I'm reading it, and I'm going to read this to you. Helter says he was on the FBI's radar, and yet he wasn't on any kind of a watch list for the airlines. Something's not adding up. Yeah, if you're on that radar, you're not flying. You know, the U.S. State Department will put you on a no-fly, and you won't be able to leave the country. I don't even think you can fly in between states if you're on a watch list. So how did he get back and forth from the Ukraine and Hawaii? So yeah, that's kind of suspect. That's a good point, Helter. Fox News article has the better description. Trump assassination plot exposes Ruth's bomb bust, barricade with illegal guns in professional demise. Okay. So Ryan Ruth, the man named as a suspect in what authorities believe was an assassination attempt against former President Trump on Sunday, deteriorated from a successful roofer to a man who thought the IRS was sending the cops after him. That's not outside the realm of possibility for a lot of people. According to a retired officer who had more than 100 interactions with Ruth, and that's this guy in the video. I'm not going to play the video clip, but I will. I'll read it. Ruth's arrest record in Guilford County, North Carolina, spans from the 1980s to 2010, and his charges range from writing multiple bad checks to felony firearms possession, that would be the machine gun, possession of a stolen vehicle, multiple counts of possession of a weapon of mass destruction, specifically binary explosives with 10-inch detonation cords and blasting cap, improvised explosives, basically. Ruth's attitude, this is a quote, was that he was above everybody. He could do what he wanted. Eric Resecki, a retired Greensboro Police Department officer and Air Force veteran, told Fox News Digital. It didn't matter. He was pretty entitled. He ran his mouth quite a bit about how he could get off and how he owned a successful business and nobody could do anything to him, and he knew everybody in Greensboro. The first time Resecki mentioned or met Ruth was in the late 1990s when the now retired officer pulled him over for a traffic violation. Quote, you'd see him all the time riding in company trucks, Resecki said. He saw Ruth at least once a day because the suspect lived and worked in Resecki's patrol zone. It would not be uncommon to have him cited many times a week, and he was very brazen about it. Resecki told of Ruth's blatant and repeated use of vehicles with expired licenses and registration. He would never try to hide it. Over the years, it was clear to Resecki, however, that Ruth was using drugs over the years, and his physical appearance showed it as he lost weight and became more paranoid. As the years went by, you could see the changes in him, Resecki says, noting later changes against Ruth that included from minor traffic violations to hit and run charges, possession of stolen vehicle, possession of stolen goods, and eventually a weapon of mass destruction charge, which would be the explosives. In many cases involving multiple charges against Ruth for a single incident, his defenders would get the court to dismiss or drop charges to alleviate the docket, Resecki said, particularly because he was not, quote, particularly dangerous person, and his crimes never resulted in bodily injury. So this guy sounds like a public menace. He sounds like a public menace that the judicial system kept passing off. Driving without a license. Okay, driving without a license and driving with expired tags, whatever. Okay. Although he did it flagrantly, that's not necessarily major. But hit and run, possession of improvised explosives, stuff like this, that's another ball game altogether. And he was very mouthy, very rude. The guy was a menace and was allowed to be a menace and run amok. And again, this guy had encountered Ruth over 100 times, and he manages to squeak by in court. Somehow, as a felon and on a watch list and on the FBI's radar, manages to fly back and forth to Hawaii, fly back and forth to the Ukraine, gets a hold of a weapon that's been obliterated. That is, there's no serial numbers on the rifle or scope, but gets to court and somehow has no money. No money, no resources. He sounds like an asset. Tuck says, I'm looking forward to hearing from ordinary people who've encountered this joker, if you ever hear anything besides this retired police officer. You know, it makes me think of when Saturday Night Live did the sketch with Buckwheat. And when Eddie Murphy used to play Buckwheat, and they did the Buckwheat assassination, and they wanted to go to the small town where the guy who killed Buckwheat came from. and they interviewed the townspeople, and they all talked about how fantastic he was, because that's what people do. Oh, he was a quiet guy, and he was really friendly, and he helped old ladies carry their groceries to the car, and he was always there for you, and he was really friendly. Do you think he killed buckwheat? Oh, absolutely. It's all he ever talked about. I'm just waiting for it. I'm just waiting for it. This goes on to say about charges in 2002. In December of 2002, this is interesting, Ruth barricaded himself inside of his business located on Lee Street with a semi-automatic rifle after being pulled over. The incident lasted 3 hours before Ruth surrendered and was apprehended without incident. So they tried to pull him over for a traffic stop. He ran to his business, barricaded himself in, and armed himself with a rifle. Quote, negotiators came in, special teams were activated, and after a couple of hours of negotiations, he surrendered himself. Rasiki recalled of the barricaded incident. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that guy's name right. I'm just saying. Okay. And this is his roofing company, by the way. This photo I'm going to put up right now. That is Ruth's roofing company. That's what's left of it. Doesn't look like there's much going on there. Jane has joined us. And Tuck says, that reminds me of a Dean Koontz novel called The Good Guy. That's his roofing business. It looks like it's abandoned. And that's an abandoned house that he allegedly, I guess, used to live in. Overgrown and neglected, probably no longer in his possession. I don't know what to say about this guy. He's very suspect. It's all very suspect. And there he is in the Ukraine, I believe. If I'm not mistaken about that. Kitty, get out of my teacup, please. No. You cannot be in my teacup. Okay? It's not good for you. But as more is revealed about this guy, we'll see. We'll see how far it goes, and we'll see what happens to him. We'll see what happens to him. Still waiting for something to come of this. And Puck says CIA is making the house payments. Are they? Maybe they'll put money on his books while he's in jail. Because according to him, he can't afford bail. Because he has no money at all. No money. He earns less than $3,000 a month. He owns nothing, no property. He owns 2 trucks, allegedly, but they're in Hawaii. They're in Hawaii. How did that happen? And H12 says they found a bomb at the rally today. Really? Which rally? As we jump to, is this a Daily Mail article, I believe? Daily Mail? There it is. Daily Mail. The claims of ABC whistleblower who says Harris got help in the debate. They're still trying to brush this under the rug, but it keeps popping up from time to time here, and it's hardly anybody's really covering this. And this one came up yesterday afternoon. There's credibility to it, but no one will cover it. Several bombshell claims were made last week in an allegedly sworn statement purportedly penned by a staffer at ABC News. The unverified document alleges close collaboration between the network and Harris's team ahead of the debate on September 10th and was published Sunday by an X account with the name Black Insurrectionist. Most notably, it alleged the station gave Harris questions ahead of the presidential showdown while agreeing to a series of other preconditions. Also disallowed were inquiries about Harris's stint as California Attorney General and those involving her brother-in-law, Tony West. The document includes several other stipulations as well as redactions obscuring the supposed staffer's identity. A statement from ABC did not address the specific claims, instead saying ABC News followed the debate rules that both campaigns agreed on. No topics or questions will be shared in advance with campaigns or candidates. And again, apparently this document, what lends credibility to it is the fact that it was released the day before the actual event, or a day or two before the event. It's dated September 9th. And Puck wants to know, did you see the pictures of the guy and the chef who's directly tied to Biden and the Harris campaign? I don't think I saw that. And Tuck says they can't debunk it. It's proven to be their SOP to help Democrat candidates. Yeah, I mean, they're trying. They're trying to debunk it, but it seems very plausible. This seems very plausible. And nobody really wants to talk about it. And they keep trying to brush this under the rug. And ABC just says, oh, we followed the rules. Well, how do we know that? How do we know that? Because the things that this letter, which evidently came out before the debate, actually occurred. They didn't really ask her about when she was an attorney general. They did not fact check her. For example, one of the things that she said was that there were no U.S. military assets in any war zones around the globe, which we know is not true. There are thousands of U.S. troops in war zones in various parts of the globe around the world. That's a lie. She was not fact checked on that, amongst other things. A lot went on that she was given a pass on. And that lends credibility to all of this. And it remains to be seen if it's going to be followed up. So we will see. And in the comment section, no, I'm not sure what you guys are talking about with Chef Jose Andres or whatever's going on. Photo of the guy and this guy and his chef who were tied to Biden and the Harris campaign. I have not heard anything about that. Puck says Trump needs to tone the rhetoric so the mentally deranged Democrats will stop shooting at him. It's going to happen regardless. It's going to happen regardless. So, because that's part of the derangement. They're so obsessed. They're so obsessed that that's the direction that they're going to go on. So, is that the idea? The chef has been seen with the shooter, because he was also seen in a BlackRock ad. He was also seen in a BlackRock ad. So what's his name, Jose? Let me see if I can pull that up. And if I can find that, I'll pull it up here really quick. All right. I have something. So I'll go ahead and share that, since that's just come up as a topic of discussion, and I had not seen this previously. And this is a Times Now article that I'm opening up. Photo of Chef Jose Andres with would-be Trump assassin Ryan Wesley Ruth surfaces. And there they are. And it says, a photo has emerged of Chef Jose Andres, who was named the co-chair of the United States President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition in 2022, along with Trump's would-be assassin, Ryan Wesley Ruth. The photo was shared by Mike Crispy, a 2024 Trump delegate. Why were members of the Biden-Harris administration, like Chef Jose Andres, posing for photos with the would-be Trump assassin? Crispy wrote along with the photo. That is a great question. Ruth was fired at by the Secret Service agents protecting Trump while the former president was playing golf at his golf club in West Palm Beach, Florida on Sunday. He was seen with a firearm by the Secret Service agents and had not yet fired, and he abandoned the weapon. And I'm willing to bet there's no fingerprints on that rifle. No injuries reported. Officials told the Associated Press the suspect dropped the AR-15 style rifle. It was not an AR-15 style rifle, evidently. They keep changing what they said the rifle was. I heard it was an AK-47 style. Then I heard it was something else. Figure it out. Figure it out. But yeah, that is very, very interesting. That is very interesting. So he's pictured here with a political figure associated with the Biden administration. And Puck says that the Democrats nominated Jose for a Nobel Peace Prize. Interesting. That is interesting. And Jericho says, I've seen some people say both would-be assassins were involved with BlackRock, but then we'll need our aluminum hats for that rabbit hole. Yeah, I believe that. I believe that. Put your foil hats on, folks. Hey, sometimes those pick up some pretty... Thank you, Puck. He says SKS with a plastic stock and 30-round magazine. Yeah, because it keeps changing. It keeps changing. All I know for sure is A, he ditched it. B, he didn't use it, which, of course, would be the smart thing to do because now they can only charge him with possession of a firearm as a felon and with possession of a firearm with obliterated serial numbers. Brian says they're liberals. They don't know anything about guns. Yeah, there you go. There you go. That is very interesting. So thank you for bringing that up, Puck, because I had not heard that one yet. But hey, the news drops in so damn fast nowadays. You just can't even keep up anymore. But that is very suspicious. That's kind of like that old photograph of... Oh, who was it? It was, they believe it was Putin when he was still with the KGB doing like bumping into a U.S. president visiting Russia. And Jericho says regarding the styles of rifles, they never get it right. They say AR style, and everyone that isn't a gun savvy or anti-gun assumes an M16 from Vietnam, which is big and scary. Yeah, everything's a style. They never get it right, and yet they're armed to the teeth in those things with conducting basic search warrants. Correct. They get you with overwhelming force. When you have to deal with law enforcement, it's an issue of overwhelming force. And Puck says Reagan. Yeah, I thought so. I wasn't sure, though. I wasn't sure. Jane says, do you think people do crazy, dangerous stuff to go to jail for a lifestyle to house them? Hey, some people probably like jail. What do I know? What do I know? Some people like jail, like that one guy in Breaking Bad. Oh, no, he'll do it. He likes to go to jail. He likes to go to jail. Daily Caller article. Daily Caller article. I thought this was interesting, too. ABC News correspondent says Harris failed to provide specific answers multiple times during the NABJ interview. ABC News senior White House correspondent Selena Wang on Tuesday said Vice President Kamala Harris often did not offer detailed responses during her National Association of Black Journalists interview. You think? Did anyone see anything from that interview? It was extremely softball. It sounded like a campaigning interview. It sounded like it was arranged by the Democratic Party or the Harris for President organization to ask her loaded questions so she could campaign. It was very softball. Harris spoke with NABJ member journalists in Philadelphia about the Israel-Hamas war, the economy, and other issues during the roughly 45-minute interview. Wang noted Harris's answers on both the Gaza war and Americans' well-being compared to 4 years ago lacked any specific details. Of course not. They don't actually answer questions. She was pressed about how her policy towards Israel and Gaza might be different than that of President Biden's, and she did not directly answer the questions or offer any policy specifics. She repeatedly said, "We need to get a deal done," Wang told the host, Kyra Phillips. Yeah, we need to get the deal done. That's kind of like, who is it, Jen Psaki with her. Well, we'll have to circle back to that. We'll circle back to that. We're going to look into it. Since Harris announced her candidacy, she's been very careful not to not have too much daylight between her views and that of President Biden. So everything she said on foreign policy very much tracks with President Biden's views, Wang added. Now, there were multiple times, though, during the interview where Vice President Harris did not offer a specific answer. Instead, she pivoted and returned to her talking points that she wanted to hit, particularly on a question about whether or not Americans are better off today than they were 4 years ago. Harris answered the question by asserting she and Biden, inherited a mess from former President Donald Trump, noting the dismal economic circumstances related to the C virus pandemic. She then assured she and Biden have created over 16 million new jobs, and we know that's not true because that was discredited in an article we read about a few weeks ago now, right? That the numbers on that have been padded and that they've had to walk it back and rework the numbers, and it's considerably lower than what we've been told over the last 4 years. Brought down the black unemployment rate, invested in small businesses, and reduced medical costs. Yeah. MSNBC host Kathy Tur fact-checked Democratic California Representative Nancy Pelosi in April, who claimed job losses under Trump were the worst out of all presidents without mentioning the pandemic. The poverty rate reached an all-time low, and the unemployment rate reached a 50-year low during the former president's term before the pandemic in 2020, according to the Trump White House press release. Harris acknowledged prices are still too high and detailed her economic plans, including tax credit for housing developers. Oh, great. Housing developers, note that. They build stuff all over the place. They're already bulldozing wooded areas all over Georgia and putting up housing. As a matter of fact, we have political opposition in Georgia trying to stop all of that because no one's moving into these properties, and they're still getting state contracts and putting up more housing communities. Nobody's there. Where are we? Prices have surged over 20% since Biden and Harris took office, blah, blah, blah. We know this. So, yeah, she dodged questions. Big surprise. Anybody shocked about that? She got softball questions. She dodged questions. They didn't press her on anything. I'm not shocked at all. And Tuck says, infomercial. Yeah, no kidding. Infomercial. And Puck says Selena Wang's going to be fired. They'll find something else for her to do. Dragon says, yet many people are still going to blindly vote for her. Correct. Yes, they are. They still are. They're going to blindly vote for Harris when they have this right in front of their eyes. As I've expressed before, I already told this story about my wife and her coworker, because she's had a couple of conversations with different coworkers, but the last conversation where the coworker was saying, I hope Trump doesn't get back in office, and she asked why. And his bottom line is that after she questioned him, he believes Trump did a better job and that things were better during the Trump administration, and he doesn't think that Biden and Harris did anything for the American people, at least not anything good or useful. But he heard Trump was racist, and so that's enough. And it's like, yeah, okay. Can you demonstrate that? Can you? Huck says at a recent campaign stop, Harris went back to her uncontrollable cackling. I think she's an alcoholic. I think she is. There's a lot of speculation about that, and I could be wrong, but I think that I think she's got a drinking problem, and I've heard many people say this. Jane says, "Okay, because she's nervous." She laughs because she's nervous. She laughs because she's nervous. That could be. But you would think after, again, 34 years in politics, she would be accustomed to public speaking without any kind of irrational behavior. But what do I know? What do I know? Maybe she's still not comfortable. And Jericho reminds us, if you don't vote for Biden, you ain't black. And Brian says people believe everything they hear. Well, they believe what they want to hear. And that's the irony of it. Because, and my wife challenged this guy with that as well. Okay, you heard that. Where did you hear it? Where did you hear that? I heard it around. I heard it in the media. Do you trust the media? Well, not really. But you believe that. Why? Because he wants to, basically. Because he wants to. He doesn't have any legitimate evidence of it. And please don't tell me about the Central Park 5. Don't get me started on that mess. Because the Central Park 5 is a joke. Trump did not get 5 innocent children put in prison. That did not happen. People need to actually go and read Trump's letter to the editor, or I guess he took out an ad. I've read it. I have read that. It's a plea to New York as a whole to pull itself together because of the incredible level of violence that had been building up all year in New York, including what happened in Central Park. He didn't focus on anyone specifically. He didn't name anybody. And those 5 children were not innocent. They were not innocent. They were just the ones who got caught, because there was some 50 or 60 people in a group, working as a group, beating people, assaulting people, raping people. And when the law enforcement was closing in, it started at like 9 p.m. until about 1 in the morning. And as law enforcement was closing in and forming a gauntlet, and the groups scattered and were trying to escape Central Park, those are the 5 that got caught. So, yeah. But, I mean, ask Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton sits there. And do you trust Al Sharpton? I bet you that guy is saying no. But Sharpton is where all that rhetoric comes from. He put these poor children in jail. Sure he did, Al. Sure he did. I'll probably get in trouble for talking about that. I can't help but get in trouble on ScrewTube, evidently. But, you know, Kamala has a solution. She has a solution to cement that black vote. And this is a Telegraph article. Kamala Harris suggests she's open to exploring reparations for slavery. Oh, thank God. Thank God. I was worried. I was worried that another politician was going to let that slip by. Let that slip by. Jane says they got off because they did not beat the woman in Central Park. The real guy confessed and the 5 sued the city. But that's not what they were charged with. They weren't, I don't think they were charged with that assault. But now she's on the reparations bandwagon because, yeah, that's going to get you black votes. Kamala Harris has suggested she would be open to exploring reparations for slavery if she wins in the White House. The U.S. Vice President said the country needed to speak truth about the generational impact of our history citing the legacy of redlining policies and Jim Crow laws as well as slavery. Okay. You know, we didn't have Jim Crow laws in every state, right? It was only in a handful of places. Ms. Harris made the comments during an interview with reporters from the National Association of Black Journalists. Oh, that's why she brought it up. In Philadelphia, an organization Trump also addressed last month, asked if she would use the executive powers of the presidency to create a commission to study reparations. She signaled her support for the idea. Oh, form a committee and waste taxpayer money on it. That'd be a brilliant idea. Quote, we need to speak truth about the general impact of our history in terms of the general impact of slavery, the general impact of redlining of Jim Crow law, she says. I think that part of that is studying it to figure out exactly what we need to do. However, she said it was ultimately a task for Congress to take up. So you want to form a committee and waste God knows how much money or how many years on it. She said, I'm not discounting the importance of any executive action, but ultimately Congress will have to, because if you're going to talk about it in any substantial way, there will be hearings, there will be a level of public education and dialogue. I think that was part of the spirit behind the congressional action thus far, to ensure that everyone can participate in the conversation in a way that elevates knowledge about history and the reference points that are the impetus of this conversation. So the old reparations banner being waved by Kamala now. And yeah, I'll talk about the impact of history. History impacts everybody. And how far back are you willing to go? You're going to go back 10,500 years to the first historical documents of the Mesopotamian empires? How far are you willing to go? Things from far back in history affect us today in ways that people don't even realize. You ever wonder how come roads are as wide as... Do you ever drive somewhere and say, why the hell are these roads so damn narrow? Or why aren't train tracks wider? And I had read a really interesting article about that some years ago. And basically, it's a model that goes back to the Roman Empire. That was the width of their chariots on the Roman roads, which still run all over Europe. And that if you didn't want your wagon to get demolished, you had to retrofit your wagon wheels to the width of the ruts that were dug into those roads by the Roman chariots, or else you'd wreck your wagon. And that created a standard that we still use on cars, trains. It affects train tracks. It affects the width of roads from thousands of years ago from the Roman Empire. So yeah, I mean, things that happened generations ago affect everything to this day, and people don't even realize it. That's the thing. And it doesn't have to be negative. You can't go back and fix it. You're not going back in time and changing that. And that standard is so worldwide. Think about what it would take to make cars a little wider and make roads a little wider, which would be safer. Which would be safer. But you change a global standard that's been long-standing for centuries. It's kind of hard to do. It really is. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard to do. Tuck says if you carry reparations to its natural conclusion, all those not of Native American descent must be deported to their continent of origin. Sounds like fun. And Native Americans are not indigenous to the United States either. Trace that back. They came across the continental divide from the far west thousands of years ago. They're not technically indigenous. Let's just force everybody in the whole world to go back to Northern Africa. Okay? We'll cram them all in there. We'll cram them all in there, since I guess by that standard, nobody should be any place. Raccoon says, how do people prove their descendants? I would assume slave owners didn't keep records. It's a serious question. Anyone can say that they are. Some can. Again, my wife is a direct descendant, but her family lives on and owns generational heirs property, which was reparations that was given away generations ago. I've talked about it before. Given away generations ago to families released from slavery in southern states on plantation land that was confiscated by the federal government and given out to family groups. And it's a protected land like Indian reservations. So they know their lineage. Other people who may not have been able to tap into that when it was given away from the government, or wandered off, or who knows, whatever, it'd be almost impossible. It'd be almost impossible. And anybody still tied to heirs land wouldn't be eligible, because technically they got something. So who's left? And what are you going to give them? And Tuck says they go back to Asia, depopulate North America, critters only. Yeah, that they came across from Asia. Oh my God. And Helter wants to know, is she open for paying reparations for slavery herself, because her father has gone on record to say his ancestors were Jamaican slave owners? That's true. That is true. And Dragon says only a fool would believe anyone will receive reparations for something that never happened to them. That's right. But no, the thing is, everybody's looking for a handout. That's why everybody's so angry when they didn't get what they thought they were going to get. When they didn't get what they thought they were going to get from California, when Governor Nuisance and everybody shot it down, the reparations, it didn't pass. And then everybody was mad, because to them it's a check. Oh, I'm going to get paid. Well, when they finally, if they ever do finally get paid, it's not going to be as much as they expect, and they're going to be very upset. They're going to be very upset, and they'll spend it, and then they're going to want more because they got away with it the first time. It's a very slippery slope. It's a very slippery slope. It's a mess. It's a mess. But people are selfish. People are dishonest. People feel entitled, especially in the modern age. They feel very entitled. Most people who are, say, of color in the United States are not descendants, have never really experienced actual oppression through racism, never grew up in, lived in, or probably ever even visited a state that might have had a Jim Crow law before they were expunged. But they, the bulb comes on and they're like, oh yeah, send me a check. I'm black. I must be a descendant. Where's my check? I want my check. And it doesn't make sense. But these politicians and these activists will pander to that for votes, for attention, for popularity. But it's not something that they can actually accomplish. And if it ever does pull off, there's going to be all kinds of problems. There's going to be all kinds of problems. Now, this is an article I thought was really interesting. We're going to jump to MoneyWise. MoneyWise article. We are so vulnerable. The deed to a $4 million North Carolina home was transferred to a complete stranger without the owner's knowledge. The local county said there's absolutely nothing they can do about it. Must be nice. One homeowner has recently discovered he no longer owns his 8,300 square foot home, at least on paper. Craig Adams, a local dentist in Raleigh, North Carolina, said the deed to his $4 million property no longer includes his name. Quote, I found out that a Don Magnum has filed a false warranty claim deed against the house and basically tried to steal it, Adams told ABC Eyewitness News, adding, we're so vulnerable. Paperwork filed with the Wake County Registrar of Deeds office lists Adam as a debtor and includes Magnum, a woman he's never met, on the deed. It was allegedly approved and officially recorded without any verification. Adams and his wife discovered the issue after Magnum contacted the Homeowners Association to gain access to the privately gated community. Adams proved to the Registrar of Deeds that he owned the home using his mortgage and tax records and stated that Magnum had no stake in it. However, the deed remains in her name, according to emails Adams received from the Wake County Registrar of Deeds and the county attorney. They can't remove a document once it's been recorded, as per North Carolina law. Oh my God. You just can't. I tell you, all the red tape and paperwork and everything in these government agencies, it's insane. And look what it does to people. Quote, they say there's absolutely nothing they can do to reverse this, Adams told the news outlet. Once it's filed, their only solution is that I have to go hire a private attorney, and the first quote I get is about $8,000 to even file a civil suit against this woman. Again, according to North Carolina law, county registrars of deeds aren't required to verify the legitimacy of any paperwork that they receive. Must be nice. In this instance, Magnum, who claims it was all a misunderstanding, has since been charged with obtaining property under false pretense. But how did this happen in the first place? Oh my God. Oh my God. Dragon says if the lady is serious about returning the property, she would fill out the quitclaim deed and turn the property over to him. No, she's got to get sued because he did end up taking her to court. And Jane says the book The Fraud by Zadie Smith is a fictional story like this article. Lost money on a property. Lost money on a property. This is scary. This is scary that something like this can even freaking happen. It's bad enough the state can just come and take your house, that they can throw you out, that they can take your property, that you forget to or have some mistake with your property taxes, and then they seize it and sell it in a quick claim sale at the sheriff at the courthouse with the sheriff, which we have seen. I read an article on that a few years back. A woman who they did that to because of some clerical error involving something like $6.72 for school tax that had not been paid properly. And they seized her property and sold it at a sheriff's sale, and it sold for like something like a third or a quarter of the value of the home. And they paid off the tax and gave her the difference. And it's like, yeah, this is hundreds of thousands of dollars less than the value of the house. And she was a widow. She was a widow with I think it was a quadriplegic son. And they put her in the street over $6 and I think it was $6.72. You can probably find the story if you look it up. It's insane. It's like you really it's really incredible. It's really incredible, folks. You got to really watch your ass. But anyway, with that, we are at the top of the hour, so I'll go ahead and start signing off. Again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you can find the live portion Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Coffee Talk and Prepper University, at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University. We're early today because I have appointments. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat, and you can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. So, hey, thank you everybody for joining us here today. Hopefully, I can get my fosters adopted today because that's what I'm running around for. I might be able to move 2 or 3 of my felines, which would be great because I have 20 and I need to work it down. I've had a lot of trouble with local shelters recently. I was working with one and we got messed up, but hope I'm trying to get back on track so I can help these animals. But thank you everybody for joining us here today. Hope you got something out of the conversation, and we will catch you